Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Man, today we've got an absolutely incredible one for you. We are looking at two absolute barn burners that perfectly capture the wild, totally unpredictable nature of knockout football. In this analysis, we've got two matches that couldn't be more different if they tried. On one side, we have this absolute mastermind tactical masterclass. And on the other, well, a gritty, bruising battle of pure survival. We're going to unpack exactly how these teams fought tooth and nail for their spot in the next round, and how the actual gameplay completely shattered all of our expectations.
Okay, let's dive into this, because it brings up a question that has literally haunted managers for decades. Is playing good football actually a guarantee for winning? We're so conditioned to think that the team dominating the ball, pinging beautiful passes around, and just living in the opponent's half is the team that always deserves to advance. But knockout football? It absolutely does not care about aesthetics. It cares about results. And as we're about to see, sometimes the team that looks like they're just barely hanging on by a thread is actually the one pulling all the strings.
Section 1. 2 different ways to win. To really understand the magic of these recent matches, you have to realize that you cannot bring a single mindset to the World Cup stage. Depending on your opponent, you have to be willing to completely adapt your identity. It essentially boils down to this: the chess match versus the UFC fight. In our first game, Morocco took on Canada with this highly calculating, incredibly disciplined strategy. It was all about absorbing pressure and waiting for the exact right second to strike. But then in our second game, France faced off against a Paraguay side that literally threw the tactical playbook out the window in favor of a purely physical, disruptive, brawn-heavy approach. So let's break down the chess match first. Section 2. Morocco's mastermind chess game. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer paradox of the first half numbers. Morocco's 3-0 victory over Canada is just an absolute triumph of tactical discipline. Manager Mohamed Awabi deserves massive credit here. I mean, Canada was hogging the ball with 67% possession. They had a much higher expected goals, or XG metric, sitting at .42, meaning they were creating the higher quality chances. And Morocco? They had an abysmal .02 expected goals from literally a single shot in that opening phase. Yet Morocco goes on to win the game 3-0. They capitalized on 3 massive chances later on. Canada was playing the quote-unquote better football, but Morocco was playing the smarter football. They managed the game's momentum flawlessly, just letting Canada tire themselves out until the spaces opened up. Section 3. The real meaning of clutch. This brings us to a buzzword we hear all the time in sports, but one that Morocco completely redefined in this tournament. We need to talk about what it actually means to be clutch. It's not just scoring late goals. It's executing perfect game management, absolute defensive solidity, and making crucial clearances under immense pressure. We always associate being clutch with a striker blasting in a 90th minute worldie, right? But in a chess match where you intentionally surrender the ball, being clutch is about making 0 mistakes when the opponent is hammering at your door. Let's look at who actually embodied this. Just look at the stats for Morocco's left back, Noussair Mazraoui. This right here is the definition of a defensive masterclass. 68 touches, winning 7 out of 8 ground duels, 4 out of 6 aerial duels, and an incredible 10 total clearances, including 6 headers. When Canada was just endlessly swinging crosses into the box, Mazraoui was the one stepping up in those individual, high-pressure moments time and time again. That is clutch. Making the perfectly timed tackle that stops a certain goal is literally just as important as scoring one.
And it wasn't just him, for sure. Achraf Hakimi, a guy we normally praise for his attacking flair, right? He put in 9 massive defensive actions. Then you have manager Wabi Wasilung making the perfect chess move, subbing on Sofiane Amrabat in the 63rd minute. Bringing Amrabat on provided the ultimate midfield cover. It completely shut down the center of the pitch, which basically allowed Morocco to comfortably wait for Canada to overcommit, launch a counterattack, and ruthlessly finish their chances. An absolute masterpiece in game management.
Section 4. France's UFC-like battle. All right, let's move to our next match and see how this builds, because we are leaving the calculated chessboard of Morocco and stepping straight into the octagon. France's matchup against Paraguay wasn't really a football match. It was more like a UFC or WWE fight. 0. Yeah, you heard me right, 0. That is the number of yellow cards Paraguay received in this match. This is absolutely staggering. Despite playing what can only be described as anti-football, constantly fouling, disrupting play, instigating arguments near the touchline, even hitting Kylian Mbappé in the nose, they weren't booked a single time. In fact, this was the first time since the 1998 World Cup that Paraguay played a knockout match and walked away with 0 yellow cards. It was a grueling physical test designed entirely to provoke the French squad. But France, they didn't crumble under the provocation. Kylian Mbappé hit the nail on the head when he said after the match, if they thought we would come in a tuxedo, they were wrong. We are here ready to fight. France realized very quickly that beautiful, flowing football was just impossible in this environment. They had to get down in the mud, match Paraguay's physicality, and maintain their mental resilience. They proved they aren't just a team of artists, they can be absolute warriors when they need to be. So, the crucial point is, how did France actually solve this puzzle tactically? Paraguay was sitting in a deep 5-4-1 defensive block, effectively building a brick wall in front of their goal. The problem for France was that Ousmane Dembélé was getting pinned way too wide. Direct runners with pace like Bradley Barcola couldn't find any space to operate because Paraguay was defending so incredibly deep. So, the solution? A brilliant tactical shift to sub on Desiré Doué and Ryan Cherki. France desperately needed players who could dribble in tight, confined spaces to pick the lock of that defense. And that substitution worked exactly as intended. Here is the exact sequence that broke the game wide open. Doué gets the ball in a tight pocket of space. Instead of relying on straight-line speed, he uses his quick change of body angles to weave through the deep block. The Paraguay defenders, totally unable to cope with that close control, finally commit the foul. France wins the penalty. There was even a bit of mind games where Dembélé held the ball first to take all the heat and pressure, but ultimately Mbappé steps up, sends the keeper the wrong way, and secures the gritty 1-0 win. It was a tactical adjustment directly countering a physical roadblock. Section 5. Orlando Gil's emotional story. And this brilliantly illustrates why we love this sport so much. Amidst all the tactical talk and physical battles, there's a human element to this tournament we absolutely cannot ignore. To close out this explainer, we have to talk about Paraguay's 26-year-old goalkeeper, Orlando Gil. Not long ago, Orlando Gil was struggling immensely. He had just welcomed a newborn daughter, and his family was so broke they were struggling to put food on the table. To survive, Gil literally had to sell his match-worn jerseys, his gloves, and his boots just to feed his family. He was practically unknown. Fast forward to this tournament, he earns a starting spot, puts on a man-of-the-match performance against Germany, and then makes 4 spectacular saves against France, winning man of the match again in a losing effort. This tournament has completely changed his life overnight. So we've seen Morocco's brilliant tactical chess match, we've seen France's brutal resilience in a total street fight, and we've seen the raw, life-changing human spirit of players like Orlando Gil. So what does this all mean? Tactical genius, brutal resilience, or raw human spirit? Which of these truly defines the magic of knockout football? Is it the tactics, the sheer will to survive, or the human drama? I'll let you decide. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack these incredible matches, and I will see you next time for our next explainer.